I just started broadcasting, so we should see people come in. Welcome, Eslinda, Stephen, and Will. How are we doing? Hey, Nikki, Thaddeus. Why don't we throw in the chat before we start where we're joining from and how the weather is today. Awesome, DC area. We got Stephen in Menlo Park.
California, there we go. DC.
All right, so it's 10 a.m. So we'll go ahead and get started. I'm sure people will continue to file in. But welcome to How to Use Marketing and Mobile Messaging to Scale Online Revenue with our amazing friends at Rally Corp. Just quick housekeeping items. We will be recording this and sending over the recordings afterwards. We're also protecting a lot of time at the end for Q&A to tackle those more specific questions. So hold the questions until the end or just throw them in the chat or the Q&A window throughout the presentation, and we'll protect time at the end to answer them. Before we start, I'd like to do a quick poll just to get a gauge of the room to see how everyone is using marketing and mobile messaging currently in your current marketing mix. So I'm gonna go ahead and launch this poll. Awesome. So some digital marketing and consistently use every channel, but with relatively low spend. And we have two people that already do use mobile messaging. That's awesome.
Nice, great.
And then one person that doesn't use mobile messaging yet. Cool, thank you. We will share the results quickly so you guys can see. Awesome. So into presentation, I'll introduce myself quickly. My name's Eric. I run demand generation here at Community Boost. I have worked extensively on managing a lot of the paid ads for our nonprofit clients. So we manage over like $750,000 in paid ads through Facebook and Google and a bunch of other channels. I nerd out about digital marketing. So I love putting together these presentations and sharing our key learnings that we learned from working with 300 plus nonprofits with all of you.
And I'm James Martin. Good to be here. I appreciate Eric and his team. Big fans of Community Boost. I'm the founder and CEO of Rally Corp. If Eric, you nerd out on digital marketing. I guess I nerd out on mobile communications. So we'll get into the details here as to why that might be, but I'm a big fan of mobile and conversion technologies like text messaging.
Awesome.
So Rally Corp is an SMS marketing software platform. We have been around for some, actually not very long. We're a startup in San Diego. We're just a few years old ourselves. Some of members of our team were part of another startup here in San Diego working with content management systems, website design development for some of the largest nonprofits and organizations in North America. We're very excited to have done that work, but spun out a group to work on some, what I would say, technologies to drive conversion and engagement further down the funnel. So we'll get into that here in a minute, but that's who we are, and we drink a lot of coffee. Didn't put that on here, but that's one of our fun stats on our website.
Nice. Yeah, and I'm with Community Boost. We're a digital marketing agency that exists to empower social ventures changing the world. This last year, we worked with around 230 nonprofits and drove some cool stats here that don't include how many cups of coffee we drink, but it might rival James and his team.
Probably so.
But yeah, we're a digital marketing agency and work across channels. So Facebook and Instagram ads, Google ad grants, email marketing, website design. We do all of it from nonprofits that range from annual budgets of $800,000 a year to $800 million. So excited to share some of our learnings here with you.
Exactly.
Hopping into our agenda, we'll be covering the power of SMS, how to attract new donors with Facebook ads, a Google ad grant, and on-site conversion design, how to engage that audience with high quality content, what to send via SMS, when to send it, how to retain donors once you've attracted and engaged them, how to turn those donors into recurring givers, and a lot more that we couldn't fit on one agenda slide. We're also going to keep a lot of time for Q&A at the end. So again, throw those questions in the chat and we'll make sure to hit them in more specific detail.
So the power of SMS, and SMS is, for those that don't know, it's an acronym, basically short messaging service, but we can slip to the next slide and we'll talk about what SMS can do for us. Text messaging, I'm going to assume that everybody has their phone with them right now. I happen to be looking into mine because I'm using it as a camera. But if I asked for a poll to say, hey, how many people have their phones? Chances are you have yours with you. You're texting your friends and your family. It's a primary mode of communication. There's an entire generation that won't communicate any other way than through text messaging practically. So obviously it's significant data. We'll get into some of that. But we're looking at about 5 times as many supporters on conversion when the SMS is done right. And we'll talk about some examples of how to do that in our time together. We can advance to the next slide. With the power of SMS comes a lot of responsibility. So we're going to talk a bit about some of the numbers, and then when we get into the tactical, practical of how we actually implement it, we'll talk about some ways that we do it a little differently at Rally Corp and some of the things we want you to think through, whether you use our platform or any platform for that matter. But I really strongly encourage you to leverage text messaging and SMS as a means for communications for your donors. And there's a couple of different ways to do that. But look at some of these numbers. 39% of people have more than 100 unread emails in their inbox. So there's a lot of unread emails. It's a very difficult way to get people's attention. Again, once they leave your website, once they leave your event, if you're relying on email to bring them back, chances are you're not converting as much as you could be. So the numbers are pretty staggering. 90 to 98% of text messages are still read most within 3 minutes. It's a very intimate and reliable way to get a hold of people. And of course, 45% of people actually prefer text messaging over other means of communications if they control that they can opt in and out, and if they're have some brand awareness of who you are and why you exist. And we'll talk about some of the strategies as well. And we can advance to the next slide for some more numbers. A 300% increase in donor engagement using text messaging. So if you want to move the needle on an engagement, I always kind of explain things, and this is really the Community Boost's brilliance of their digital marketing is awareness, consideration, and then of course decision. If you basic funnel, we'll talk here about attraction, engagement, and some of the strategies for retention. But really, there's no other technology available today that is more reliable than text messaging if you're looking to get a lift or an increase in how many people go from aware to engaged, or how many people that have previously been engaged to come back. You have a 12 times better chance of getting somebody to come back, click on a link, respond to a message, chat with you, fill out a form, take the next step, like something on social. You have a 12 times more likely event of that happening than if you just simply send an email. And then, as I mentioned before, there's significant number of people that prefer text messaging over email, but even more people prefer it over over calls. So there's some data there to suggest that. So yeah, we'll move on to the next slide. I'll say this about SMS: it's not earth-shattering. Some people think, oh, it's scary, it's different, it's new, it's technology, and I recognize on some level it is. But SMS as a protocol or a platform has been around since the 90s, so it's been around for a while. What we're talking about here is communications. We're talking about how do we raise awareness and engage people in a meaningful way with respect and in such a way that we can really garner that two-way conversation. So we're talking about two-way conversations. That's not earth-shattering. It's not a big idea here. It's just we're looking at where are people actually responding to our messages, and then how do we incorporate that in our other strategies, particularly around digital marketing. And Eric, I'm going to turn it back over to you, I think. I got one more. For nonprofits, text messages in an effective and scalable way, as I mentioned, to attract, engage, and retain. So it's really running the whole gamut of capturing donors and awareness, getting them to take some action, driving them back to re-engage you again. And then when done right, deployed alongside a thank you program or an executive director random phone call, if you want to start calling into your list of people, or referrals, any number of ways that you want to deploy SMS as one of your channels. It's not a one size fits all. One method is, it's not a silver bullet. It's one of many communication technologies available in our tool chest, so to speak. But if you're looking for a way to to make it super easy for people to engage with you, to stay connected, and to retain them over time, text messaging is really where it's at. So we'll pose the question. So how do we use this to scale revenue? Well, Eric, I think maybe now I turn it over to you.
Yeah.
Yay, got that one right.
James, let's tackle it. So we're going to dive into the meat of this presentation, which is 6 strategies to scale online revenue using marketing and mobile messaging, and kind of using the framework, like James said, attract, engage, and retain. So jumping into the first of the 3, which is attract. When we think about this, we're thinking, how do we, as nonprofits, find new potential donors who are interested in learning about our organization or have potential of donating to or contributing to our organization? And after working with 350 plus nonprofits at Community Boost, we've tried a bunch of different channels, and the 3 that we've seen be the most impactful are Facebook and Instagram ads, the Google Ad Grant, and then for this context, using conversion design elements on site have been really helpful as well. So the first one, which is one of my favorite channels, is Facebook and Instagram ads. I'm going to make a quick note that we will be covering this in more of a high level manner. So if you have specific questions, definitely throw them in the chat for the Q&A at the end, or we're always happy to book one-on-one time. You can just email eric@communityboost.org. But when we look at Facebook and Instagram ads, what we have is a platform or an ecosystem, Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp, that touch more people, more monthly active users than any religion, movement, or book in the history of mankind, which is crazy to think about. But what that means is that they have data points on 3 billion plus people, and that means your donors are on the platform. But what that also means is that when we look at doing creative and targeted advertising, when we used to do targeted advertisement, we had the problem of scale, right? So if you wanted to reach people who golf, for example, you put an ad in a golf magazine, but you can only reach so many people. With 3 billion plus monthly active users on the Facebook ecosystem, you can reach people with extremely targeted messaging. So you can do different targeting to people who are women or men or have specific interests, but you can also do it at scale, and you can really grow, which is incredible. And then the results that we've seen for our nonprofits that we implement these channels for really speak for themselves. But so that tremendous hyper targeting is really what makes this channel stand out. And then it has incredible reporting afterwards. So you can see, I spent $1 to drive $3 in donation revenue. I bring that to my board to ask for more budget, and it makes sense because you can prove the ROI of this channel. But when we look at the campaign structuring we like to do, and this is broad, this definitely changes organization to organization, but a rough rule of thumb is to run 25% of your budget to your own audience, right? So again, we're always vying for their attention. If you don't have a really well-adopted SMS list, you can run emails at your own audience, but you're only reaching 20% of them who open them. So ads are a great way to get back in front of them. remarketing and friends of followers. So you can run ads to people who visited your website and showed interest by staying for a certain amount of time, but then left your website. You can run ads to get them to sign up for an SMS list or to go to a landing page where they opt back in to an SMS list to get updates. So running remarketing ads like that to a specific content piece that you have, people who visited that page and left, is a great way to reach people who have already showed that interest. And the third tier is expansion. So using lookalikes, interest audiences. Basically, you're telling Facebook, these are people who have engaged with my organization, whether it's a CSV list from your CRM or something else, or data from your website, and say, find people similar to this who are likely to donate or contribute to my organization. And Facebook is really good at doing that. Again, I nerd out about this. If you have more detailed questions, just put them in the chat. We'll hit them later. But some other key high-level tips: video creative really wins. So just being compelling in video creative, especially when you're reaching new people. Take advantage of the additional viral effect. So again, you can run ads to people who are likely to engage with your content. They'll engage with it, they'll like it, share it, and comment with it. It'll show up in the newsfeed of other people who might not have heard of your organization ever before. Completely viral, and that's free awareness. And then finally, where the rubber meets the road is that we can see $1 to $3 cost per net new names, which is pretty incredible, right? You can find someone who's really likely to engage with the content your organization is putting out and eventually contribute to your organization for $1 to $3, which we don't really see in other channels. So this is a little bit in the back end of Facebook if you aren't familiar. So in this top image, you can see you can target people who have visited your website, segment that by like different pages. You can upload a customer list. You can make lookalikes of people who have engaged with certain accounts, whether that's Instagram or your Facebook page. There's a lot more you can do. And then you can also run specific targeted creative to specific interests, right? So here is their detailed targeting tool where you can target, if you're a humane society, for example, people who are interested in animal shelters and pet adoption and also interested in humane societies and also are of a certain income bracket. Again, this type of tailored and targeted ad serving hasn't really been seen in like any other channel or technology since advertising has been around. So it's something that we should definitely take advantage of, and that the results speak for themselves when we look at our clients. So on to the next channel is the Google Ad Grant. So please throw in the chat if you haven't heard of the Google Ad Grant before, but basically Google gives qualified nonprofits $10,000 a month to use in free search ads with some stipulations around like what your cost per click can be, certain keywords you can bid on. But the main thing that's crazy is that they give us $10,000 a month in free Google search ads, which means people are searching for things related to our organization, keywords related to our organization. We have the power to show up in front of those people, which again is mind-boggling to me, because when else have we been able to, if someone is halfway across the country but is interested in supporting an organization like yours and they're typing in a keyword to Google, asking to find something that relates to the need your organization solves, you can actually show up for them, and it's free, which is crazy. But again, just reverse engineering what your audience is searching for. So things to do campaigns, activities for kids, best local nonprofits. There's a bunch of interesting strategies we can do with the Google Ad Grant. That's how Community Boost started. So we've managed millions of dollars and have specific strategies like using different bidding strategies depending on keywords you're bidding for and how to maximize budget, or even if maximizing budget doesn't make the most sense. But that might be a little too detailed for this presentation. So feel free to book one-on-one time if you want to talk through that. But what can really happen is you can send thousands of potential supporters to your site every month for free, because it's free ad spend from Google after they launch this basic program. And then finally is on-site conversion design. So basically what these are is if you've ever been on a website and you've scrolled for a certain amount of time and a box has popped up, or you've moved your mouse to the exit bar and a box has popped up in the middle of your screen, or there's a smart bar on the bottom of the website. It's conversion design elements. We use a software, Sumo, that does this, but there's a bunch of softwares out there that you can use. And essentially what it allows you to do is that you have people visiting your site already, whether that's through the free traffic you're sending from the Google Ad Grant or through organic traffic, and you can convert those people into the next step of the funnel, right? So if someone's scrolling on a blog through 2/3 of the blog, you can assume that they're interested in your content and roughly in your organization. That's when you can trigger a scroll box like the one on the right to pop up, asking them to stay up to date to get exclusive updates on impact stories, volunteer opportunities, and more. And then you can have them enter an email and a phone number and then opt in to an SMS list there. And that person would have just viewed your blog and left and learned about your organization, but here you're giving them an opportunity to opt in. The cool thing with these is you can A/B test different images, text, calls to actions, colors, and all those things have pretty remarkable effects on the conversion rate for these pop-ups. And a 1% increase in conversion rate for a pop-up, depending on the amount of traffic your site has, can have pretty incredible effects on the growth of your list. And then you look at how those net new names in your list convert to new donors. If you're using SMS, that net new name for your list might be 5 times more valuable than a net new name to an email list. And the downstream effects actually become pretty awesome. So again, the tools you can use: exit intent pop-ups, smart bars, and scroll boxes. And then for the scroll boxes, you're growing your list, just a value-based CTA. Focus on usually CTAs that don't say join my newsletter, but instead they say get connected or stay up to date. Focus on the true benefit to the donor, perform better. And then again, using this to grow the SMS list can be very powerful.
So let's talk about engagement, and we can move on. We talked about attraction with Eric, so thank you, Eric, for that. But now that you have you've attracted them, you've got their email, you've got their phone number, you've got an opt-in, they've taken out their phone and texted you. We'll talk about some different strategies to do that. QR code, short code. At any rate, they've said, hey, you know what? I raised my hand. I want what you have in way of information. I want to register. I want to volunteer. I want to sign up for more information. I want to sign your petition. I want to download that video. Any way that you get them to raise their hand. Once they do that, now you have the ability to move them further down that funnel. So we've got attraction, and now we're talking engagement. So as Eric mentioned, we can obviously drive them to an email, and many organizations still obviously do that. And I send emails to everybody that fills out a form on my website. But what I'm looking to do is get them to opt into a text message as well, so that I can then text them, because I know that if I text them in addition to an email, my response rates are much, much higher, particularly if they understand that that's what I'm doing with their number. And there's some ways to do that, obviously, with compliance and with class, which we're always leaning towards, more class than compliance, to go above and beyond even what the regulations say. So let's, the point is here, if we know we can get them back on the phone and have a meaningful conversation, if that's your donor journey, if it's about having a conversation, then use a text message to text them a personal message and say, hey, thank you for completing our interest form. This is, Deb, the executive director, and do you have a few minutes to chat? And you can send that to 10, 15, 20 people at a time. And if they say yes, you can auto connect with them, and Rally will support two-way voice conversation as well as just sending text messages. So you're sending a text message ahead of a phone call, because chances are if you just call them straight away, you're certainly not going to get them to pick up. They're probably screening their call. So, there's any number of ways to use the engagement piece. In this context here, we're doing something very simple. You've driven them to a landing page where there's a video, or to a virtual event where they're watching something streaming, and then you have a banner that shows up. These are very easy to create in various streaming software platforms, where you can scroll a message. You can also use a product like Canva, which is a phenomenal tool where you can create overlays and include a response, or just like now in this presentation or in a video, you can simply say, hey, text this word to 24365 as an example. So there's a couple of different ways to do that, but what we're looking to do here is just make it very, very simple and very easy for someone to say, hey, you know what? I've raised my hand. I want to learn more. I want to take out my phone and text in, or I want to give you my number and I expect to engage with you more. And then, of course, as Eric mentioned, the viral effect. We're driving people back to multi-channels and multi-platforms. So if you can send a text message with a link to a video from your Facebook page and ask them to comment or give their, engage. We love to know how our mission has impacted you personally. Would you be open to sharing your story on Facebook? Click this link, watch the video, and post in the comments to enter our whatever, right? A corporate sponsored raffle, or a giveaway, or something that you're doing to drive people back. But point is, you're taking people from an ad to a landing page to a video with a simple call to action that drives them then back to your Facebook page. and you've just touched them across multiple platforms, making targeting and retargeting a whole lot easier, further down the road. So we can go on to the next slide. Really at the end of the day, it's about building relationship, right? We can talk tactics all day long. I always caution people to back up and let's look at, before we talk about the how and the what, let's talk about the why. And the why here with Rally and anything that we do is to be values-based and to say, look, I want to have relationships. I want to have, if I send a text message, it needs to be conversational, not transactional. I'm not just sending them text messages for money. I'm looking to hook it into a conversation and to drive ongoing conversation. I just got a text message from a client of mine this morning with a question. So we have a texting relationship. He can text me and I text him. And if he doesn't pick up the phone or doesn't respond to an email, I can respond, I can hit him. And I have, lots of clients that I do that with. And at the end of the day, it's about having a conversation that's meaningful, that moves the needle, where we're clear on what we're trying to do. So as you can see here with the Salvation Army, they run various telethons and virtual events, particularly through COVID. They had their audience sign up for alerts. So they had one keyword where you would register for an alert if you were interested in a particular campaign or program that they were running, some kind of result that you were passionate about. They had a different keyword that was a simple one and done give and be done with the relationship. And then they have others where they use rich media, images, text messages with videos where they're driving ongoing conversation and they're just continuing to unpack their story. But really, it's about building relationship through providing missional updates and keeping people connected to your cause. We can go on to the next one. And that's retention. Now, retention is important and we can advance. We've got to attract, engage, and retain. All this is for naught if we can't hold on to them. So that starts from my perspective as a place of gratitude. Sending thank you messages, personalized messages. I can't tell you how many times I've made a donation to receive a letter 60, 90 days later. It's just not efficient. So if I can hit send on my gift, go about my day, the next morning get a personal text message from the executive director or the donor development person or the major gifts person and say, hey, look, this is thank you for this. You have a few minutes to chat. Love to understand this. Those go a long ways to communicating with your donors and being very grateful. So do that personally and make sure the platform, whatever you're using, supports two-way conversation, not a one-sided blast. And of course, I want to be able to call that phone number as well and have a conversation on voice. You can share updates in real time if there's a particular campaign that you're running or a program that you're building. We've seen this work really, really well from everything from human trafficking to social justice issues to active wells and waterways that they're building overseas. So anything that you're doing where people have identified that they're passionate about what you're about as a cause, and they say, hey, not only will I support you and give, but I want to stay connected. You're simply just using texting as another means and channels to do that. And then I've mentioned this before, but I'm a big believer in just conversation. You can learn a lot. And surprisingly, this does scale. I've seen campaigns do a voice, either with a voicemail drop or an actual auto dial or a text message with hundreds of thousands of phone numbers. You can scale this thing, and Rally can help you do that. There's ways to do that with video and different technologies, but we are talking very intimate types of communications to hundreds of thousands of donors. It's not a problem given today's technologies and the things that we can do. And Eric, I think is the next one you?
Yeah. Awesome. That was all super helpful and incredibly strategic information. I think when we look at the attract, engage, retain framework and we think through like where can we pull levers to get the most outsized results based on what the work we're doing, I think it's the retention, right? Because
absolutely
relatively hard to attract donors. Engaging them is also difficult. When you're retaining them, they already donated once. So now it's like, are we going to spend effort trying to attract new donors or retaining the ones we already have? Like, it definitely makes more sense to take the time to send a personalized thank you message in some regard. Another great way to build retention and predictability for your nonprofit's revenue is through a recurring giving program. So it's something I'm sure everyone on this webinar has already heard about, but I'll just give some tips that we've done with communities as we've rolled out a couple of recurring giving programs for some of our clients. So in a big picture, just an impact metric that I thought was awesome is that recurring donors have a 487% increase in donor lifetime value compared to donors who don't donate through a recurring giving program, even who donate multiple times. which is pretty incredible. Again, it gives you smooth out, predictable revenue because they're committing to donate month over month. And the third benefit is that it's a way that younger donors are accustomed to interacting with a lot of for-profit organizations with subscriptions and recurring costs. And it's a model that I think the social space can take over and that can really work. So some key tactics that we've seen in our best performing recurring giving programs are a themed landing page. So to have, instead of just a donation checkout form where it says make this monthly, have a themed landing page where it shows, like, by deciding to donate monthly, not only are you donating a certain amount of money, but you're also contributing to a effective and predictable revenue stream. And that allows us to do this, this, and this, right? So to have crystal clear impact metrics in that landing page where it's like impact blocks, Social Souls, which is a client of ours, does this really well. It says, like, by donating monthly, this is how many shoes you're putting on people's feet. You have other programs where it's like, this is how many kids you're sending to school by deciding to donate monthly. And then you can tie SMS into that, right? So you can use that in conjunction with your other channels to share those impact metrics with that private tribe, which is the next thing. So to have, this is what the Charity Water does this really well with the spring, where you could be a normal donor and donate to Charity Water, or you can join the spring, which sounds a lot cooler, but it's like a specific community that you can all join as like-minded people who are all committed to supporting this cause. And so if we have a private tribe, again, you can incorporate text messaging there where you can segment them. I believe Rally does, where you can segment them in Rally's tool and then communicate to them specifically. Next tip is to incentivize engagement. So if you have like a tiered version of a recurring giving program, and you can even send like direct mail gifts to people, like physical gifts, after they've like taken certain steps in certain tiers, or even if it's via Rally, sending them specific text message communication and calls from the executive director. Any way to incentivize engagement and also incentivize like sharing the program. So like James was saying, a fantastic tactic is putting in a SMS thank you text to go engage with a post on Instagram or Facebook. If you do that with an ad that's already running on Instagram or Facebook that you're using to attract new people, the new engagement on the ad will make the ad's quality score go up, and it'll be cheaper to show that ad to new people because of the engagement that you're generating from people who are already familiar with your organization. So that's kind of a hack that we have tried a couple times. And we've seen it work pretty well. But yeah, that's basically it for a recurring giving program. Again, taking the next step to make it more than just a option on a donation form to donate monthly, but like a true community and tribe. At Community Boost, we love being corny, so we think a best-in-class recurring giving program serves a purpose. So we'll be sending these slides afterwards, and you can have this slide, but it's simple, emotional, it's relevant, right? It uses video, it's effective, and it uses stories.
100%.
So that basically covers it. I'm happy to have a lot of time for Q&A and next steps. So at Community Boost, we're offering a complimentary one-on-one digital marketing audit and strategy session for anyone from this webinar. Just shoot me an email at eric@communityboost.org or at communityboost.org/let's talk. We can go really in depth on specific questions you have. If you're like, I don't know if we're using our ad spend in Facebook correctly, or our Google Ad Grant isn't spending the full $10,000 a month, or any questions that you have, we're happy to talk through them and chat with you.
Yeah, and at Rally, we're offering a donor journey blueprint. So you can text a donor journey without the space, doesn't matter, to 24365. That's 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, or just use your QR code. You can scan just use your camera app on the screen there. That'll trigger that text message for you. Of course, at rallycorp.com. So check us out there. There's a couple of resources with the donor journey blueprint. Essentially what we're doing there is we're going through the attraction to ambassadorship, just looking at the funnel, like what is your current process. I'm a big believer in documenting. I feel like we make such an impact when we just document our process and identify what those are. So I have some recommendations to document that process out, some key metrics or KPIs to look at. And then of course we offer, as just like digital Community Boost, to get on the phone and walk you through communication strategies that can drive conversions at different touch points. We take a little bit of a break while I'm out of town right now, but typically we have a once a week session called Text Gen Together, where we just get together and talk about these things. And there's information on how to sign up for that, as well as a free course in that resource. So start there. And if I can answer any questions on this time together, I'd love to do that.
Awesome. Yeah. So go ahead and put your questions in chat and we'll answer them. Let's see.
Looks like we had one question on SMS. Only 17% of our entire active data donor database is, and Razor's Edge has a verified SMS capable phone. How do we successfully use SMS and grow our base of SMS capable phone numbers? This is very common. We get this question all the time. And if you think about it, it makes a lot of sense, because if you stand up a newer channel, or and I realize, texting is not necessarily that new, but if it's new to you, it's new to your organization. Anytime you stand up a new channel, you have to, again, document that process, understand like, okay, what are we doing here? So if SMS has not been a communication strategy or a focus of you in the past, then obviously you're going to come in with some older data. The short answer here is we can curate that list down and find out, as you mentioned, which are SMS capable and which are not of your current phone numbers. Chances are you have board members, you have current donors, you have email addresses, you have various data that is at your disposal. So we would work on some messaging to send out an email, for example, and say, hey, sign up today for text alerts. We'd want to build a program around some ways to do that. Like, why would I give you my phone number? What's in it for me? So that's just an age-old question you're going to have to ask no matter what. So we can think through some strategies on how to do that. We love 24/365, an example on social. If you're posting videos, doing Instagram posts, doing anything on Facebook, sending out emails, include a link that they can opt in, capture their phone number at every turn, incentivize them to take out their phone and text in. We've seen organizations do this with playlists because they have an upcoming virtual event, and they want to make sure everybody that is running for the cause has a link to their playlist, or they might be activating ambassadors. So there's any number of strategies and tools depending on the actual campaign and the audience. But I will say this: if you don't have a documented process to grow your SMS lists and start to engage those people, meaning and A/B testing what actually works, then in 6 months from now you'll be in the same position. So I always encourage people to start where they are, and then once you, as an organization, start to prioritize that, things do fall into line, and you'd be surprised how quickly you can build that list over time. Yeah. Eric, do you think I answered that question, or do you have anything to add to that?
I don't know. That was great. Patty just asked if the slides will be available. Yes, we'll be emailing those out along with the recording. Yeah. Let's see, James, I think another one for you. Elizabeth said, when getting started with SMS, what are some best practices? How often to text and when? What CTA to use? Donors or non-donors? Segmenting audiences, etc. So there's a lot in there. I don't know if we want to break it up.
I love it. Yeah. So 100% segmenting is the right. I heard you say segmenting. So that's outstanding. Segment people as to whether they're reoccurring giving, first-time givers, audience as much as you can. And you can certainly over-engineer this, but as much as you can be specific in your messaging, both to who the audience is and how you message them, the better. But I say, you can text somebody as often as you're creating value. I think we all have our upper limit on how many times I want to text message, but if you're creating value and engagement and conversation, and I'm passionate about your cause, I probably don't want to hear from you every day, but you'd be surprised how often I would want to hear from you. I see way too many people limiting the amount of outreach via text messaging, email, because they have a scarcity mindset on like, well, I don't want to burden you with my cause. Well, we can flip the script on that and say, look, no, I want to know about you. I want to create a change in this world. The world needs a better, my wife and I, for example, adopted a Bichon, and we love hearing from the Bichon rescue. We have no intention of getting a second dog. Our kids are quite disappointed, but I love knowing what's going on with the Bichon rescue. And if there's an event at a park, we may go because my kids can play with the dogs and it's fun, right? So it's a small nonprofit. It's very regional. They've come up with very creative ways to text and engage their folks to say, look, this is, do you know anybody that's looking for a dog? Here's the new Bichon we have that came in. So there's any number of ways to do that, provided you're creating community because people want to belong, and you're creating value because people want to benefit. So as long as people are belonging and benefiting, keep messaging. But you hit the nail on the head with the segmentation. We definitely want to look at how to segment that and be very specific. And Eric, last thing I'll say, I've seen text messages launch with 5 people and 3 people reply. And that doesn't seem like a lot, but that's 3 more people than you had before. And then it just grows exponentially over time. And that same campaign's up to a couple hundred now. And it was just because they took a step and said, hey, we're going to introduce texting as a means to communicate. And we're going to build lists that create value. And we're just going to keep at it until we have that list built up. And now they have 200-300 people that will respond to a text message easily. And that didn't take as long as you would think.
Yeah, definitely. I want to, along those lines, I think people can think of like the size of an email list and the size of an SMS list, thinking they have to be the same size. But if 17% of your donor list is in Razor's Edge and you get all those people to opt into texting has a 98% open rate and email marketing has roughly a 20% open rate. Given those numbers, like they're roughly the same quality of list, right? Because they're to get people's actual attention, like you're getting the same amount of people's actual attention. Of course, there's other ways to communicate with a larger list. So it doesn't go.
And I don't know about you, Eric, but I would take 10 actively engaged donors over 1,000 that just ignore my email anyway. So it's about driving engagement at the end of the day, which is why Rally is not a spamming tool. It's a two-way conversation, not a one-sided transactional text messages. So many tools are. And we didn't talk a lot about the AI, but we also use some artificial intelligence and some AI enhancements to make sure that we're looking at certain things and meanings in text. So we can certainly get into the more technical stuff if you want to know, but there's some new technologies available to us now that allow us to get really very insightful information into how we're communicating, unlike any other platform available to us today, really.
That's great. And then another note around knowing how much communication is too much. I think we all tend to operate in like focus groups of one where we're like, I think this will be too many emails, but we have data around this is our unsubscribe rate from text messages, or this is like the negative response rate. So just kind of pushing it until we hit a unsubscribe rate from email specifically or from SMS that we think is too much.
Yeah. And I can assure you, Eric, I say this all the time to, when I do some, sales coaching, what have you, but I always tell people, it's like, you get tired of your marketing a lot sooner than the people that receive your marketing do. I mean, it took you a long time to craft it, to create it, to project manage it, to get out the door. When you hit published on your blog post, you've read that thing so many times, you're sick of looking at it. The people that are reading it for the first time. So they love consuming that stuff. And a lot of times we stop at 1 or 2 or 3, but data suggests most people want 7, 8, 9, 10 touches. I can assure you that the consumer brands out there are not asking the question, how often should we reach out to our customers? They're measuring the analytics on the back end to see if people are actually unsubscribing, and they're being smart about their messaging because they know that it's about impressions and mind share.
Awesome.
So one more question come in. Is that you or me? Yeah, absolutely. Taryn asked about, should we use SMS to get people to visit your other platforms? 100%. It's about omni-channel, multi-channel communication. So, Community Boost can do amazing things if you have an audience on Facebook, lookalike audiences, retargeting, that type of thing. I'm all about moving people from email to SMS, from SMS to Facebook, or from, email to Facebook to SMS. I don't care how you do it, but you want them in as many channels as you can because it's all about touches. And so if you're concerned about just texting everybody all the time or emailing everybody all the time, then use ads, retargeting, use Facebook post organically, use, of course, texting, and use email. And that starts to broaden your reach and deepen your opportunities for connection. So, yeah. Would you add anything to that, Eric?
Just the tip that I really love about having an ad that you're running, getting the link to that ad as a post and putting that in the text that you want them to engage with. Because once they engage with that ad, makes the ad quality score go up in Facebook, which makes it cheaper to show that ad to more people. And it makes all your marketing work better in a virtuous cycle.
100%. And Stephen, I saw your question on costing. Well, I'm more than happy to share that with you. It's a lot less expensive than you would think. Just like Facebook charges you to play on their platform as far as the ad grant or the ads that you can run and Google's ad grant, because it's a very effective medium. SMS is a very effective. And so the carriers like Singular Wireless, T-Mobile, AT&T, Verizon, of course, they charge us as a company to actually send messages on their network. It's not free. So there is a transactional fee. Rally has taken an attitude of inbound is always free. We'll bundle what most systems call a credit was 140 characters. We say 300 characters. So we've done different things to make that as affordable as we can. Of course, you can buy in bulk, but you're looking at roughly about 5 cents per engaged donor on SMS, per campaign send. So I would say that if you had 100 donors and you're texting and 100 people engaging with you, what is that worth? 5 cents per donor. So it can be very cost effective. And we have different ways that we can help you measure that and make sure it stays well within budget.
Awesome. We got another question from Susan. Is there a maximum number of people you can email without getting in trouble with the FTC? Interesting. I'm actually not. I don't know.
Yeah, with email, I don't believe so. I know with SMS, there's not. The only time you get in trouble with SMS or email, CAN spam or TCPA, is if you're sending SMS to people that have opted out, or they've said, hey, I'm not interested, or you can't necessarily document an opt-in process. There's some opportunities for nonprofits that are pretty unique to nonprofits, which is pretty neat, because if I donate to your cause, I'm expecting communications around that. So whether or not I explicitly say opt-in, but we actually did an entire webinar just on compliance, on 7 ways to stay compliant. So that's on our website at rallycorp.com. Happy to do a session with you to look at your particular process and review that with you, and work through that. But we send millions of text messages, Eric. We have gotten 3 legitimate written up complaints where they said, hey, this company or this nonprofit was in violation, and we ended up, it was particular to that organization. So we just booted them. It was an easy decision for us. We rarely have complaints, and we read a lot of the messages come in flag for our engineers as well, because we're reviewing sentiment, and which basically means if someone replies with a middle finger emoji, that triggers in our system, and we know about that, and so do you. So you can go in and dial into that particular conversation and then respond. What we have found is that even if you're sending text messages to people and they say, hey, take me off your list, if you respond in a timely way and say, oh, I'm sorry for the trouble, even on a short code, that will get people to, that really lowers the frustration when they realize there's a human. People just don't want to be communicated with robots. So Rally puts the human back in the equation to make sure that there's always a human monitoring the campaigns. They can respond in a timely way, and we make that easier for you to do as well. So I don't know if it was related to SMS, but I took it there because that's what, when you got a hammer, everything looks like a nail, Eric.
Exactly. Well, yeah, I think that basically covers it for questions. I encourage everyone that's still on this webinar to check out Rally software. It's pretty amazing. If you stayed on for this long, you're definitely interested in using SMS and mobile marketing to scale your online revenue. So James.
Donor journey at 24365 for the donor journey blueprint. James at 24365 for a copy of my business card or my V card. I'll drop it in your phone, and you can call me directly, or my emails in the chat. So I appreciate Eric and your team, and anything we can do to support driving people from ads to conversation. We're all about doing that for sure.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. If you have any more questions, it's your last chance to throw them in the chat. Otherwise, we'll be closing out. All right. Thank you all. Have a great day.
I didn't even spell everyone right. Look at that. Thanks, Eric. I appreciate you.